In this week's episode of the Stockscores Market Minutes, I'm going to talk about a day trading strategy for this week stock market. Plus, I'll take a look at the overall market indexes and try to give you a sense of where the market is going. We're going to look at the day trade of the week on SPRB and run a market scan in search of day trading opportunities. It's all coming up. All right, so what is a day trading strategy for a weak market? Unlike a year ago, we've got a market that is trending lower and is really lacking the volume and excitement that we saw. There is, however, always a way to make money in the market. And the key when the market is moving lower like it is to focus on stocks that are trading on their own story. These are the alpha stocks, and they are characterized by abnormal trading volume and strong liquidity. Now, at the end of the video, we will look at the day trade of the week, and I will show you exactly what that looks like. Plus, we're going to run a market scan on Stockscores to show how you can see the stocks that are showing these alpha characteristics. But the key is to build a watch list of these abnormal stocks and then monitor them through the day, either on the 1 minute or the 2 minute chart, depending on how liquid they are, and look for trade entry signals. I'll cover that off at the end of the video. All right, let's get into this week's market analysis. And as always, we start with the US markets. The S&P 500 had a little bit of weakness this week, but not really that bad. We had the big jump up in the market on the news from the Fed. And then people thought about that a little bit and we went right back down again. The S&P is actually holding up fairly well. Those large cap stocks are holding up fairly well. The long-term upward trend is still intact. You can see the long-term upward trend line is good. It's when we get into some of the more speculative stocks that we start to see some weakness. So the NASDAQ also holding up fairly well, but that's dominated by stocks like Apple and Amazon, which are holding up. It's when we go to the small cap stocks that we see the weakness. And I like to think of the IWM, which is the Russell 2000 ETF, as a proxy for retail traders. And the retail traders just aren't that enthusiastic. I think maybe there's some tax loss selling in some of those small cap names that people were buying through this year. And as those stocks have been going lower, people have losing positions, they're not buying them, and they are instead selling them to crystallize their tax loss. Well, that should end in the next week or two, and then I think the market will start to move up. One of the reasons is that the IWM is at support. You can see that here. Look at how often this index bounces off of this support level. Doesn't mean it will continue to do so, but when you sell off into support, you usually bounce off of it. And on Friday, we did manage to close above the open, and that should be indication that prices will bounce back a little bit next week. All right, on to the Canadian markets, and here is a chart of the TSX 60 short term. And you can see a little bit of falling tops over the last month. We do have some rising bottoms over the last couple of weeks, but that is a pennant pattern with a downward trend into the pennant, so somewhat negative price pattern on the TSX. The long-term chart of the TSX is still okay. That upward trend line is still intact. We are right at support on that upward trend line. So we want to watch for is whether this gets broken. If we do break that upward trend line, then we'll need to get defensive on the larger cap stocks in Canada. TSX Venture, much like the IWM, has been in sell-off mode for a little over a month. And I would say we want to be careful with those junior speculative stocks. They are at support like the IWM. They may break that downward trend line. But until they do, let's be a little bit careful. On to currencies, US dollar has been moving up as the US Fed starts to talk about raising interest rates. Of course, that helps the US dollar. And that really started getting telegraphed by the market back here when we had those breakouts. That's why I've been bullish on the US dollar for a number of months. Bitcoin has been selling off the last 5 or 6 weeks. It has broken this short-term upward trend line. The key now is can it hold this horizontal support. It is still above it. Doesn't look particularly strong, but perhaps as we fall into support, we'll get a bounce either in the next few weeks or early next year. Ethereum also seeing some selling pressure. Not as bad a chart, but it has also broken this upward trend line, and therefore at best we're neutral on those cryptocurrencies. On to commodities. Gold, pretty quiet, slowly compressing its volatility in this little price pattern here. It needs to either break out or break down to tell us which way it's going to go. Probably more likely to break to the upside. We saw a little bit of strength in gold stocks at the end of this past week. Still not a great time to be buying them, but something is starting to perk up there, and we'll keep an eye on that. On oil, we're relatively stable at the upward trend line. Not a lot of excitement, but no reason to panic long term on a breakdown in oil. It is still holding the upward trend line. And finally, the fear chart. We had that little pop in fear at the start of the month. It's basically gone back to neutral, but that can perk up at any time. Remember, those big stock market indexes are at some support at the upward trend line. If that support zone gets broken, we could see some more weakness. All right, let's get into the ratings then. I remain bullish long-term on US and Canadian stocks, but the Canadian market a little bit more bearish in the short term. I'm neutral short-term on US stocks. Gold neutral on both time frames, and oil remain bullish long-term, but neutral short-term. The stock market is relatively cold, but that's not out of the ordinary for this time of year. It's the end of the quarter. We're going into the holidays. There are a few hot stocks each day for day traders to take advantage of, but there's not a whole lot of opportunities for the longer-term traders. I suggest watching that IWM ETF for a break of its downward trend line to telegraph a resurgence in these longer-term trades. Gold and oil are quiet but stable, and as I said, fear is low. All right, let's go look at the day trade of the week, and this time we're going to take a little different look. A stock that was really fitting with what I talked about at the top of the video, and that is an alpha stock. And what are the characteristics of alpha stocks? Well, this chart kind of tells it all. This is a 1-minute chart, and what I want everyone to first notice is that the volume today, well, Friday, is much higher than on Thursday. All right, that is the key signal that this stock is trading with alpha. Once you have those stocks, and I'll show you a market scan in just a moment on how to find these, but with that short list of stocks that are trading with alpha volume, we then simply watch for good pattern breaks. Now, if the stock is trading more than 20,000 times a day, if it's on pace to make more than 20,000 trades per day, then we can monitor the 1-minute chart. If it's less than that, between 10 and 20,000, I prefer to use the 2-minute chart. And then it's simply a matter of looking for breaks from good patterns. Now, you'll notice that we've got these little pink dots on here. That's my action candle indicator. And when we get action candles breaking out of good patterns like pennants, which we see twice, you often get a good move out of that. You can also trade pullbacks. That's another one of my strategies, the pullback play. So when you have a little flag pattern in an upward trend, and then you get a message candle, which is another one of my Stockscores indicators, message candle from a flag in an upward trend, that often leads higher. But you can see on a number of occasions, these little action candle breaks from low volatility lead to an upward trend. Now, if you want guidance on how to do this, you can join us with Active Live. It's a service on Stockscores. You do have to be an Active Trader member to participate in that. There's information about that in the trader training area of the Stockscores.com website. I encourage you to go take a look at that if you want to learn more. All right, let's now jump over to the Stockscores market scan and just run a scan that we would use to find day trades. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is set my default chart to a 2-day, 2-minute. So I pull up any chart on Stockscores, go to chart options, and change this from daily to intraday. And we're going to make it a 2-day chart. I'm going to then click on create chart, and then my second step is to change the interval. Actually, it's already set to 2 days, so that'll be fine. So we're now going to, so it's a 2-day, 2-minute chart. We're going to go run a market scan called, well, guess what? The day trader scan. Now, this is only available for day trader, active trader members of Stockscores. And again, you can learn more about that in the trader training menu right there, learn how to trade. We're going to run this scan, and it's going to search the entire market for stocks that are fairly liquid and also trading with abnormal volume. Now you can see that this stock is trading abnormal volume on Friday, and it made a little break from a pennant pattern there. And a nice thing to do in the evenings, just to practice, is to go through these charts and look at where the patterns are. There's our day trade of the week, SPRB. Where was a good pattern break? Perhaps right there for the big run higher. Now you can also look at these on the 1 minute chart if you want. Stockscores does cover 1 and 2 minute charts, and just practice seeing the patterns. But also, if you are a active trader member and you can run these scans during the day, run them about an hour after the market opens. Build your watch list of stocks that are behaving abnormally, and then look for those key patterns on the ones that have visually abnormal volume. Here's another one that was good on Friday. You can see the strong volume in AMC relative to normal, and there was a little flag break right there. There's a little pennant break right there. Nice little pops, make $1 or $2 per share from a relatively short number of stocks. Typically we have 3 to 5 that we watch that are trading abnormally with good liquidity using the algorithms of Stockscores and Active Live. Well, I hope you've enjoyed it this week. I want to wish you all the best of the holidays. I'll be back in the new year, and hope you subscribe to the channel, like what we do here, tell your friends, tell your enemies, and most importantly, trade well.